Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out a blue-black mill deck, which is quite the accomplishment in Brawl if you get to mill someone for 100, but we're going to try anyways with Phenax, God of Deception, as our commander, a 5-mana indestructible enchantment creature, but it only turns into a 4/7 that can attack and block once our devotion to blue and black is at least 7, so not super likely to happen in this deck since we are a more controlling deck at the end of the day, but it can still be useful because if Phenax turns into a creature, it can now tap with its own ability to mill the opponent equal to its toughness, which would be 7, but that's the ability that we're going to try to use to mill the opponent out by presenting some high toughness creatures that can mill the opponent for a ton all at once. Taking a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with some generic mill effects, some of which can maybe double the effectiveness of our mill cards, and that's how we can also set up some 2-card combos that mill half of the opponent's library, which then get doubled to mill the opponent out all at once. Then we've got plenty of mana artifacts, since we are trying to cast a pretty expensive commander, and we've got some other expensive cards throughout that we would like to resolve in a timely fashion. Then we've got our high toughness creatures. Some start out with a lot of toughness and can immediately start milling with Phenax. Some will actually scale with a number of creatures in each graveyard, so those will get better the more cards we keep milling, and those can eventually close out the game by themselves. And then we've got our blue and black interaction, which includes some spot removal, some sweepers, some counter spells, just ways to survive opposing strategies pretty much. And then we've got some extra turn cards, because taking an extra turn with Phenax and some creatures in play means we get to mill the opponent for a bunch more. And finally, some miscellaneous cards, including the Unstoppable Plan from Aether Drift, allowing us to untap not only our mana artifacts, but also our creatures, so those can mill twice per turn cycle. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mill effects, I'll first go over the mill doubling effects, which include Brewvac at 3 mana as a 1/4 creature, and then there's Fraying Sanity as an enchantment that will essentially curse the opponent. Then we've got our Maddening Cacophony, which can mill the opponent for half of their library if we cast it with Kicker at 6 mana total, otherwise can mill for 8. So a kicked Cacophony with either Brewvac or Fraying Sanity can just win the game on the spot. Then the River Churn Monument, after we maybe kick a Cacophony, can also mill the opponent out by exhausting it, and then we get to mill equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. Then there's a Glimpse to just mill for 10, pretty efficient at 2 mana. Mesmeric Orb can gradually mill both players as they untap their permanents, and milling ourselves can still be an advantage as it can grow some of our creatures or maybe enable some of our delve spells. Then we have Jace the Perfected Mind, could mill the opponent for 15 at once. Archive Trap can often be cast for free if the opponent searches their library with a fetch line, for instance, and then we get to mill them for 13. Cut Your Losses, another way to mill half of the opponent's library for 6 mana, can also maybe sacrifice a creature to casualty. And Breach the Multiverse, also just a powerful card in and of itself, but also mills both players for 10 in the process. Then our mana artifacts include Chromox, which is a recent addition to the format, and at 2 mana there's Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mindstone, Transformer, and the Iron Crag. I'm playing the non-creature artifacts since we don't want to blow up our own creatures with our various board wipes if possible. Then there's Midnight Clock, which is also a way to eventually refresh our hand. Skyclave Relic we can cast with Kicker to make several copies. Celestus can also maybe help us draw and discard as it switches between day and night. Power Stone makes 2 mana if we get to untap with it, similar to the Firemind Vessel, which also makes colored mana, and Hedron Archive can also later be sacrificed to draw 2 cards. Then our high toughness creatures start out at 1 mana with a Turtle, an 0/5, so that's the most toughness you'll get for 1 mana usually. The Secret Keeper can first mill the opponent for 4 to maybe enable some of our other synergies, and then still an 0/4 afterwards. Rune Crab mills with a Landfall, and we've got plenty of fetch lands to enable Landfall several times. The Curtains can also maybe disrupt the opponent's hand if we transform it. The new Coral Tyrant starts out at 8 toughness for just 2 mana, so that's another very synergistic card here. Wall of Lost Thoughts can mill for 4 when it enters, has 4 toughness. Summon of Age grows with a number of creatures in each graveyard, so that's one of those cards that can scale over time and can also mill the opponent for 4 at first. And then there's the White of Precinct 6, which gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your opponent's graveyard, a little better in multiplayer admittedly. Then there's Ancient One as an 8/8, so that can also mill for 8 with Phenax, and can eventually start attacking and blocking if we have Descent 8 enabled, and can also activate it for 4 mana to maybe mill the opponent that way. Night Howler gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. Can also bestow it upon our creature to immediately activate it to mill the opponent for a lot more. Then there's the Shapeshifter, which has multiple modes. One of those is an O12 Defender. Carix has 17 toughness to start out, and Tree of Perdition has 13 toughness, but can also exchange with the opponent's life total, so could maybe go up to a 25 toughness creature if we activate it first. And then the Consuming Aberration is probably the most powerful one, as it grows with all cards in the opponent's graveyards, so that can also get quite large and mill the opponent in maybe just 1 or 2 activations. And then our interaction includes Brainstorm as a bit of card selection, can maybe hide cards from a discard spell or just get rid of unwanted cards once combined with a shuffle effect from our fetch lands. We've got our Wash Away to counter opposing commanders for 1 mana, and other counter spells include the classic 2 mana counter spell, and of course Mana Drain, which is the upgraded version. Then there's Fatal Push to remove creatures for 1 mana. We've got Cyclonic Rift, which will often try and overload to bounce all of the opponent's stuff back, and River's Rebuke, the 6 mana sorcery version. Aetherize can bounce all attacking creatures for 4 mana. And then we've got more spot removal with Bitter Triumph. Drown can either remove creatures or be used as a counterspell. And then we've got more sweepers with Toxic Deluge, Damnation, Crux of Fate, and Deadly Cover-Up. Some of these can be a little awkward if we have a lot of our own creatures in play, but usually we're happy to cast these first and then maybe get some of our creatures going. And then we can take additional turns with Temporal Manipulation, Time Warp, or Temporal Trespass, and there's plenty of ways to fill our own graveyard for Delve, since we can always mill ourselves with Phenax's ability. And then we have more Delve cards with Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise for card advantage. And Eldritch Pact can either be a way to draw a lot of cards, or can be a win condition. Let's say the opponent has 25 cards in graveyard, now we can just deal 25 damage to the opponent to win the game on the spot. And then we've already mentioned Unstoppable Plan, quite good with our creatures and Phenax, and our various artifacts as well. And then a mana base has a few utility lands worth pointing out. Hypno Rivulet can mill the opponent for 4 if we sacrifice it. Mystic Sanctuary can be fetched to maybe return an instant or sorcery from our graveyard back on top if we have enough islands in play, so that's often what we'll prioritize early in the game. Otawara and Takenuma can be channeled, and then we also have a creature land with a Restless Reef, which can also mill the opponent for 4 when it attacks. And then, as we mentioned, plenty of fetch lands. Urborg also a recent addition to the format, so the fetch lands can potentially help find cards like Mystic Sanctuary once we have enough islands in play, but they can also provide an extra landfall trigger for Rune Crab, fix our mana in general, and also get our Surveil land as one of the blue-black dual lands we have access to. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Saheeli, Filigree Master, so an artifact deck. Our hand has potential. Got some ramp, counterspell, and then Fraying Sanity, pretty exciting if we can combine it with Tree of Perdition and Phenax milling for 13. Alright, Wash Away is also going to be useful. I could play Midnight Clock and have it available. But it looks like our opponent's going to maybe counter. Nope. Midnight Clock resolves. They're going to Prismari Command to blow it up, sadly. So that'll set us back on mana. Alright, so could Fraying Sanity, then Saheeli resolves. I think we wait. It's gonna be a Gyruda next. That flies, could be sort of annoying. I think I do counter it, as we can't really block it with our Tree of Perdition. Alright, aligned is good. So now I can cast a tree, or we could go Sanity, keep up Wash Away. Also reasonable. Yeah, maybe this is a little safer. Possible they counter this. Trading resources back and forth. Not the end of the world when we have a Dig Through Time in hand. It's going to be an Oracle, as they were missing a land to cast Saheeli. And now I guess we'll play the Idol. Oracle gets to scry. And a World Walker Helm is next. Can't wash away that one. Alright, so we could go shields down. At least I can end of turn dig through time, and I guess we can wash away plus dig through time, even though I don't get to hit my land drop for turn. And then we would love to resolve Phenax with all these heavy hitting creatures in hand. Opponent passes, we'll dig. They probably counter back. Spell Pierce. So yeah, they've got a pretty reactive hand. Treasure Cruise, another way we can make use of our graveyard. I guess we'll go Tree of Perdition, keep up, wash away now. And then that's ready to mill for 13 with Phenax. Opponent finally goes for Saheeli. Can they counter back? They cannot. So unless they've got their own wash away, Phenax might resolve. And then Aberration's going to be better once the opponent's graveyard is a little bit more full. Damnation's good insurance to have. Phenax resolves, and we can activate at instant speed. I guess if they surveil something to the top, I can mill. They did keep it on top, so I guess I will mill. Since it's not like I need a blocker on the ground. And I guess they kept a land on top, so we know they want to draw lanes. Mightstone, not enough to take out our Tree of Perdition, so just draws 2 cards. So now Aberration and 18-18. And a 1/1 Stone Coil. This one's also pretty good at 13 toughness, but I'll play Aberration. And then we should be able to mill them out pretty quickly now, between Tree of Perdition and Aberration. One with a machine, drawing some cards. Do I want to mill in response? Sure. They haven't drawn Time Walk yet. And I guess with Oracle of the Alpha they did put a few additional cards in their library. I milled Mox Pearl from the Power 9. That's about it. Key to the Archive is next. Could also maybe find a extra turn card. So Aberration 33-33. Take our turn. And then Treasure Cruise, also an option. Night Howler, let's see, I can bestow. Enchanted creature gets +X/+X. X is a number of creature cards in all graveyards. So yeah, we can bestow this upon, I guess, doesn't matter, Tree of Perdition, and then activate Aberration. Or we can make Aberration huge. Maybe we'll do it this way. Mill the opponent some more. And then I guess we want to activate Phenax first. Then Tree of Perdition. And then consuming Aberration, and yeah, that's more than 100 cards getting milled in one turn. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing a Gyruda Helga deck, so high mana value ramp deck. So it does mean at least no 1-mana elves. This hand could be decent with Crux of Fate as a board wipe and Cacophony to get things started. But yeah, for now we can get our Surveil land. And then we're hoping to find some large creature to synergize with Phenax, because that's what we're missing. So we Surveil. And an 8 toughness creature will do. Could still hold it, since we might want a Crux of Fate before we get Phenax online. And want to wait to kick the Cacophony. So I do still need an extra land to deploy the Archive as well. But at least we don't need to worry about any cheap counter spells. Our opponent doesn't have the same luxury. Alright, Glimpse also probably wants to wait until after we mill half of their library. So yeah, we don't have much going on. Maybe could have played Unstoppable Plan, but it's also not doing much. At least our opponent has to consider the possibility of a counterspell. Goes for Lookout. And I guess I don't want to fetch yet, since we don't want to thin out our deck. Sanctuary would be great to get back stuff, but currently I'll just take it as an untapped land after we fetch an extra island. So we wouldn't be getting anything back. But can play Archive. And then next turn we have a few options. If the coast is clear, might just want to mill half of their library. Speaker helps them ramp. So maybe not the turn for Phenax, and instead go for Cacophony. We milled a Cityscape Leveler, that could be an issue. So that could blow up our Archive. Opponent takes an extra turn as well. And then this could be Elrond's Epiphany to take an extra turn. Uro is also trivial to escape now that we've milled half of their library. So 39 cards remain. And our opponent's going to Treasure Cruise to draw 3, also for just 1 mana. So yeah, milling them did have some drawbacks. Possible they have the counterspell in exile. As our opponent passes with 3 mana up and a lot of cards in hand. So this is going to be tough. Good start with Crux of Fate. See if that gets countered. And then try our 0/8. Sky Turtle gets back Hall. Sure. So at least we don't have to worry about Leveler this turn. Metamorph can copy the Archive. And a Null Drifter evoked can draw 2. So they're down to 33 cards. And it could still have a counterspell in exile. Time Warp doesn't do much until we play Phenax, which our opponent's probably going to fight over. And yeah, Unstoppable Plan also doesn't do much, but can still cast it here. Alright, opponent lets it resolve. So now I could mill for 16 if the plan resolves. Alright, so 24 cards remain, and between Time Warp and Glimpse we could present lethal, assuming they don't blow anything up. But a Farewell, of course, is gonna say no to that. So had I maybe played Unstoppable Plan on turn 3, I would have been able to sack the Archive to at least draw 2 cards. Opponent did not exile Graveyard since they want to keep Uro and Leveler available. And Jace can brainstorm here. It's gonna Fate Seal us instead. Keeping a card on top. Brewvac into Glimpse, that's milieu for 20. So maybe shouldn't have kept that one. Okay. And yeah, that'll do it. Kind of a quick peek at the opponent's library here, just because I'm curious. So we can see their build here. Some adventures, lots of ramp. A pretty greedy pile, as you can imagine, with this set of commanders and companions. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Gyruda, Doom of Death. So our opponent's gonna do some milling of their own. Don't have too many creatures they can hit, but they might have some clone effects to keep chaining together Gyruda. Either way, this hand could work out. Maybe can hang on to the Mystic Sanctuary to get something back out of the graveyard. So, yes, that's a little optimistic. Yeah, maybe it is. I'll just play it tapped now. Transformer for the opponents. And we need to find some creatures here to go with the Unstoppable plan. Opponent hasn't searched our library yet to enable Archive Trap. Metamorph can copy Transformer. And I'll play my Vessel. So at least I didn't get to copy that with a Metamorph. But they can still play Gyruda, so we'll see what happens. I guess with the plan we still have access to Cyclonic Rift. But we'll wait and see. Opponent, of course, will have plenty of clone effects, so they can keep copying Gyruda. But yeah, that's fine by me, since eventually we can still wipe the board. They are milling themselves, which kind of progresses our own game plan. Displacer Kitten is what they ended up with. So I'll just take my turn. Could overload Cyclonic Rift already. I think I'm happy just casting a Crux of Fate, since the Kitten could be problematic otherwise. And I guess we can Surveil then. And Gyruda's a demon, not a dragon. Goes back to hand. Still have Cyclonic Rift available. And Beseech is next. Without bargain, just searching up something. Could be a counterspell, could be a ramp card. We don't get to find out, but I can Archive Trap them now. And did not seem like that a counterspell in hand. Got rid of a Breach the Multiverse as well. Alright, so I could try Phenax. I don't think we're overloading Cyclonic Rifts. And then I should tap the Vessel. That resolves. Do we Glimpse now, or do we wait? I'll wait. Maybe we top deck Fraying Sanity or Brewvac and we can double the mill. A Roaming Throne, okay. Can double Gyruda's trigger. And Operative can copy Roaming Throne, alright. Cyclonic Rift is looking good. But I kind of want to wait and just let the opponent mill themselves out. Might be a mistake. And for now I'll just mill for 4. And then I can still cast a Secret Keeper to start milling with Phenax. And have Overloaded Cyclonic Rift up just in case. Yeah, the plan plus Vessel's pretty sweet. And now we'll hopefully get to see it in action with our creatures as well. So there's Gyruda, so that's about to be a lot of extra triggers, but I kind of want to see it. Our opponent's going to be the one milling first. And a Spark Double, ooh, that's the best one to hit, since now it's an extra non-legendary copy. So we'll let this all happen. End of turn, Overload Cyclonic Rifts. And then hopefully Glimpse can get the job done. But this is a lot of triggers. And I guess they can now copy the non-legendary Gyruda, so they actually get to keep it in play. Opponent makes another Roaming Throne. Yeah, they might be able to mill me out completely. So then I have to pull the trigger here. Alright, they did miss on a few triggers, getting Ancient One and Carrix, so I get to steal those. So that's 5 more Gyruda triggers. How many clone effects are left? Yeah, I guess now we can Rift, and then they will mill out with Gyruda, and then I don't risk decking myself. That works. So opponent does get some more creatures back, but at least we're not gonna end up milling out. And then Glimpse should get the last couple cards. So what a interesting matchup, to say the least. So they get to mill 8 more cards. And their opponent's just gonna lose to their own trigger. Unless they can somehow do something in upkeep. But I doubt it. Opponent cycles, so that I'll just lose the game on the spot. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Chandra, Flameshaper. So, kind of a Super Friend style deck. Our hand is reasonable. Could use a bit more mana. Aetherize is probably not at its best, since I don't expect a ton of creatures. So I guess then Night Howler is also not great. I do like the other cards, but maybe that's overall still a mulligan. Alright, this might be better. So if possible, we want to maybe get back Cacophony with a Mystic Sanctuary. This is an island, this can get an island. And Chromox can speed things up. What we currently don't have is a creature to synergize with Phenax. So I'll start out by surveilling. And the surveil land is also an island. And a white, again, is probably going to be too small. Alright, Fabled Passage can also get an island. But maybe for now play the Hollow, which also contributes. And I don't need to keep up Drown just yet. Nothing I really want to pitch to the Chromox. Alright, opponent's got the Idol. We draw our own. So we can play it and then maybe just fetch a tapped island. Signet. So next turn we could already go for a kicked Cacophony if we play the Chromox. As our opponent finds a Lootmonger in some lanes. So they're just making 3 spawn to cast Chandra next turn. Alright, so we've got our work cut out for us. And draw Manipulation. Might be what I pitch to the Chromox, or I could pitch Drown. Manipulation is pretty fun with the Sanctuary as well, but I'm guessing we still want to get back Cacophony. Or I could try and counter Chandra. Yeah, I think we just pitch, drown, and then keep the manipulation. And then play Aurora to play Kicked Cacophony. Although we did mill a leveler, we've been here before. So 42 cards remain. With Sanctuary I can get back Cacophony once again. So they might have a few more creatures than I first imagined. And it's going to be smaller Chandra first. So then they can still play the Flameshaper. Okay. So that can deal damage, make mana, copy creatures. So they could maybe get double Cityscape Leveler in play. I think we still get back Cacophony. Can mill half of their library once again. But then how do we get the remaining 20 or so cards? That's going to be the challenge. Or I could just get back the manipulation, but then we're also kind of just spinning our wheels here. So tough call. Yeah, I think we do get back Cacophony. And then kick it once again. So 19 cards left. But our opponent can win the game pretty quickly with a copied leveler. And then burning us out. I guess never mind, this only deals damage to creatures or planeswalkers. But yeah, opponent's going for leveler. They will copy it. So that's 16 right there. They'll blow up our artifacts, replacing them with Power Stones. And at 6 life, it's not going to be too difficult for a mono-red deck to close it out. Wash Away probably doesn't save me. Although it might be better than tapping out for Phenax, since this is not going to do anything by itself. So 17 cards left. At least the +2 exiles the top 3, so that also sort of helps. They found a Display of Power, cannot be countered. Copies instants and sorceries. And a Chomping Mastosaur. I guess I can counter that one. Other opponent can just use the display to copy the counter spell and counter back, but they didn't go for it. So we're at 4. Do we get another turn? We do, but it's just a command tower. But I'm sure they'll find other ways to close it out.
This is a fun idea.
So our opponent goes digging.
I'm just getting started.
Can blow up artifacts. So there's a chance we get another turn with only 8 cards remaining, so there's quite a few spells that can win the game by themselves now. And a Rampage blows up our Power Stones, exiles 2 more cards, and Guardian Idol gets in for 2. 6 cards remain. Are we going to lose to Guardian Idol? Looks like it. Deadly Cover-Up can only wipe the board at sorcery speed. And a Guardian Idol is going to cross the finish line. Anything I can do here? Cover-Up would have been better at exiling the Cityscape Leveler, but now it's too late. Yeah, I can't think of anything unless... Can this name Mountain? Well, I guess it can. So maybe if all their remaining cards are mountains, I can still mill them out. And... Alright, only the 2 mountains. So, still plenty of win conditions left in the deck. Could exile more mountains from graveyard, but not gonna bother. Alright, GG's. So we got them down to 4 cards in the end, I guess 3 cards with their draw step. So unless they get too overzealous with their Planeswalker activations, Guardian Idol should get there. If not, Chandra would probably get there in 2 turns as well. And our opponent drew a Tally, so they could give that haste with Chandra. And that's also going to be lethal. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Chulane, a banned creature deck. Our hand's got potential. Just for now, ramp into Trespass. But that means we will have mana to deploy Phenax, even if it does get countered somehow. And we can also cast whatever expensive creatures or spells we draw. Opponent does have the turn 1 birds. I'll Surveil. And then look for some curve toppers. Say no to the land. And a Tree of Perdition's pretty good here. Could first exchange life totals and then start milling for 25. And then with Trespass, take an extra turn. Could mill basically for 50 in one go. But turn to Azusa's not bad here. And a Haywire Might can blow up my vessel. So then probably just play the tree. And also have to be careful with Haywire Might blowing up my commander, since that I guess also works. But I'll still play the tree first. Because yeah, Phenax is not a creature when it's on the battlefield. So then the Might could blow it up. Opponent's going off. 1 mana short of casting Chulane at least. And they're going to use the Might on our Transformer. Alright. Works for me. So now the Vessel can maybe stick around one other turn to set up our Tree of Perdition anyways. But looks like our opponent's going to Neoform to get a 4-drop. A Beast Whisper makes sense, more card draw. And they have a Grazer left as well. So their opponent is pretty much empty-handed. They even drew into a land. But now between Chulane and Beast Whisper they can go off. I can maybe save the fetch land for later. Play Vessel. And then I guess we would go up to 28 toughness at the moment. Guardian Project, even more card draw. Might be overkill. Alright, and I guess this will enter tapped since this is not a basic land. But I suppose we have enough mana to cast Phenax and Turtle. And then next turn Trespass. Should be pretty strong. So this can mill for 28. Then we can mill for 33 twice. So 66 plus 28. Doesn't leave many cards in their library. Especially if they start drawing a bunch. So just gotta hope they don't mess this up for us. And I guess there's no need to sack the Fabled Passage with Urborg. Ooh, Swords to Plowshares. Not what we wanted to see at all. Still gonna mill my opponent, even though I could mill myself to set up the Trespass. Over 50 cards that we could have milled otherwise. So now we need to find another card that can do the bulk of the milling. Aberration counts. Can still mill for 5. And then next turn, hopefully, mill you for 33 twice, and the second time is going to be quite a bit more. So they need to find another removal spell. Opponent picks up Grazer to draw 3 cards here. So they will get to see a lot of cards. Which in a way also helps our mill game plan. Just need 1 turn with the Aberration. A Leafkin is acceptable. So they have 5 mana left. 6 mana. Draw with Project. Tatiova, more card draw, but not leaving a lot of room for interaction. Draw with Project. Do we get to untap Paradise Druids? So at most they can have 1 land left here. So could still cast a white removal spell, but don't have to worry about counter spells unless they're free. Mill for 5. Aberration grows, and Unstoppable Plans, pretty awesome too here. And yeah, our opponent's gonna scoop it up, because as it stands, I guess our opponent would just die to a single Aberration activation. But yeah, between our extra turn here, we could mill the opponent quite a bit more, and we have our Unstoppable Plan to untap our creatures once again. Could even cast both, I guess, in the same turn if we mill ourselves to fill the graveyard with Delve. So we had a lot of sweet lines available. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Vexyr, which can make a bunch of 3/3s, I guess. Our hand seems fine. We've got Mind Stone into Tree, setting up a turn 4 Phenax, can immediately start milling. And hopefully we don't face too much creature removal. Opponent surveils. Keeps on top. So not entirely sure what to expect from this commander. Curator, I guess lots of alchemy cards is the answer. Can fetch another island. Play a tree. So potentially awkward with our own Crux of Fate, but we don't need many turns with Tree of Perdition on the battlefield to get there. Opponent keeps on ramping. And hopefully there's no wash away to counter Phenax, because I think we have to go for it here. Can fetch a swamp. Could also get another island for Mystic Sanctuary. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Can always fetch swamp with Verdant. Alright, no wash away, that's perfect. Now the question is, do we mill for 13, or do we first go up to 24 life, and then we can mill for 24? Kind of depends what our opponent does this turn. It's gonna be Wilson first, which of course is a whole dictionary here when it can specialize. So there's a couple options our opponent can choose from. But yeah, I think that's fine. And then I think it's worth it to exchange life totals, because that'll basically make up for it next turn already once we activate. But if they remove the tree, I may regret it. Alright, opponent's gonna cast a Teferi's Protection, which I guess also would have protected against the mill. So that's fine. Can play Monuments, keep up Archive Trap. Fear of Change is next. When it enters or dies, exile one of their creatures, and then random stuff happens. Okay. So Wilson's gone, and turns into a Gilded Sentinel, 3/3, no abilities. Alright, let's try this again. That works. And then I'll mill myself as well. Maybe after fetching. Can get a Sunken Hollow, or maybe, I guess, a Sewers to Surveil. And then depending what's on top, we may or may not mill ourselves. Marsh Flats can go, so then I'm fine milling in case we find a Delve card. And Breach could have been fun. Take our turn. And a Deadly Cover-Up's looking good too. So I can mill for 24 and then exhaust to mill for a whole bunch more. But first we probably want to Archive Trap before we exhaust. So I'll pass it back. A Restoration Angel, gonna flicker maybe the Fear of Change. Yeah, that works. And then upgrade the Sentinel into a 6-drop. This is kind of fun to see, it's like we're playing Momir. The Smiling Flood. Put flood counters on lands, turn them into islands, and they get to untap those islands. Okay. So that works. Can still block the 6/6. Also can't forget about Restless Reef. So if we have spare mana, we can animate it just to tap it with Phenax to mill for 4. Alright, opponent sadly going after the Monument. So that might force me to just mill with Tree and then exhaust. And then we can draw with Mindstone as well. So, can draw here. Maybe should have started there in case we found a counterspell. And then now Monuments can exhaust. So, just the opponent, I think. We have plenty of cards in graveyard already. So 26 cards remain. Opponent does get some pest tokens. But yeah, if we get to untap with Tree of Perdition, that should be game, since we can cast Archive Trap first too. I guess they do get to untap some lands, so they could still have a counter left. Take my turn. Toxic Deluge could also wipe the board while leaving Tree of Perdition alive. So we have some options, could also animate the Reef. If we go for Deluge, we should be able to survive another turn to mill them out. Sure. So we'll see if this works first. It does shrink down the tree, so it doesn't mill for as much, but we can wait until the opponent's turn. Alright, that works. And then I could cast a Celestus, probably not necessary. And then our opponent gets one more untap step, basically. Seek New Knowledge. Doesn't technically search, so doesn't enable Archive Trap. Now we can mill for 24 again. Pathlighter drafts a card. Should be fine. Yeah, another option we had last turn was just to animate a Restless Reef, and then we might have gotten there. And then Lukamina should be fine too. And our opponent scoops it up, so Tree of Perdition goes the distance. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, facing Chandra, Hope's Beacon, often a land destruction deck, actually. Finding a counterspell for Chandra would be nice. That being said, we've got Ramp into Cut Your Losses, with a Night Howler as a potential win condition, although the opponent's deck probably light on creatures. So maybe we pitch Night Howler to Chromox, so I can play turn 1 Mindstone. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And then hope to maybe draw a large creature to synergize with Phenax. Can mill half of their library first, and then there's a few cards along the lines of Night Howler that could be effective. For now, yeah, I guess we can maybe wait to kick the Skyclave Relic, although that's still 2 turns away. Still might be worth it. Next turn we can just cast Phenax. Alright, at least this one is pretty beefy, so I could play that one first. So next turn I can immediately mill for 8 if I'd like. If I play Relic, I can already cut your losses. Maybe that's actually still fine, since that allows me to first mill half their library, and then we can start working on the remainder by milling for 8 repeatedly. Yeah, I just don't think Night Howler itself would be super effective, since I doubt our opponent's playing a ton of creatures. But we're about to find out. Half of their library. Yeah, it's mostly removal, ramp, planeswalkers. Not many creatures. So now Breach can also get back their planeswalkers. And a Rune Blaster will blow up my land, so yeah, they are on the land destruction deck. Good to have the artifact mana. But now we're pretty far from casting Breach. So play Phenax. This can first block, end of turn mill for 8. Do need to do that 4 or 5 times at least. So we'll still need the help from our Breach the Multiverse. Chandra can deal 4. Probably just gonna make mana.
Over here. Oh, this is gonna hurt.
And a Mechanized Warfare means red sorcerers deal 1 additional damage now. Can still block at least. Mill you for 8. A Blood Moon would have been pretty scary. Sewer's sadly understaffed, so can't quite breach, and next turn they might make mana, play Chandra, and blow up 2 of my lands. So then drawing a land is still not good enough. And if they don't blow up my lands, we already have 7 for breach. So this seems okay. Could actually activate the Reef to attack Chandra while we get the chance. This only deals 3. And get to mill for 4. So 31 cards remain. Alright, let's see if they can blow up my lands, or if they focus their attention elsewhere. Chandra makes mana, so we could see Hope's Beacon, which can also make 2 mana. So then they have 3, 4 with an extra land, which is enough to cast some of their land destruction spells. Of course, there's the classic Stone Rain at 3 mana, but nope, just a Mind Stone. So it looks like we'll get to cast Breach after all. Mill you for 8. So then with Breach, we're getting close. And a white is pretty large, although I guess still counts creatures in graveyard. And again, there's not many of those. So we'll definitely breach the multiverse. Could have milled for 8 first, but at this point we've seen most of the opponent's library. And what do we like? Could go for a hasty Ruin Blaster, But yeah, we're not finishing off any Planeswalker with that. Solfim, I guess, is just a 4 toughness creature for Phenax. Probably makes the most sense. Koth doesn't do much. Yeah, I'll go with Solfim. And we get a Consuming Aberration. And that one's going to be pretty large here. And our opponent scoops it up. Alright, so we got to see our blue-black mill deck in action. It's not the most competitive Brawl deck out there, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you're looking for a high win rate, but if you're looking for a fun time, this might be up your alley. So that'll do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.